Hello, Namaste. Welcome to today's session. We will continue with where we left off in the last session of the chapter 28, Reincarnation of the book, The New Path. But as always, before we start, let us invoke the presence of God and Gurus here with us. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, friend, beloved God, great masters of Kriya Yoga, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar Ji, beloved Gurudev, Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, saints and sages of all religions, dear friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow at thy feet. Great masters, be with us here today. Help us to tune into thy consciousness, thy guidance. May we always live our lives according to the teachings of Kriya Yoga. We are thine, be thou eternally ours. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Just a minute. So we will start with a chant.
Dated 31st.
कौन कहता तू है काली माँ जगदम्बे लाखों रवि चंद्र तेरी काया से चमकते लाखों रवि चंद्र तेरी काया से है चमकते कौन कहता तू है काली माँ जगदम्बे कौन कहता तू है काली माँ जगदम्बे लाखों रवि चंद्र तेरी काया से है चमकते लाखों रवि चंद्र तेरी काया से है चमकते Who tells me thou art thou, my mother divine? Who tells me thou art thou, my mother divine? Thousands of suns and moons from thy body do shine. Thousands of suns and moons from thy body do shine. Who tells me thou art thou, my mother divine? Who tells me thou art thou, my mother divine?
Pausing here for a moment. Closing our eyes, keeping the gaze uplifted, the spine straight. Visualizing this, the creation, the space all around us, the sky, vast sky with multiple stars. Visualize the Divine Mother who tells me thou art dark, O my Mother Divine. Thousands of suns and moons from thy body do shine. Visualize the presence of the Divine Mother in all this creation, infinitely vast. So expansive and so beautiful. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we have done part of the chapter, the last session, where we ended by where Swamiji writes that how this evolution happened, where there's this pure spirit, vibrationless spirit, uh, wants to experience, express that joy, the ever new joy through me. And so that pure spirit vibrated a part of the consciousness. And in that vibration is what this whole world got created. And also now Swamiji writes about how karma, where does it start? He says in minerals or plants or even animals, even the carnivore animals, there is no individual karma in all this. They are more, guided by the mass karma of that species. But after going through millions of these incarnations, finally that soul enters the human body. And once it enters the human body is where it also the human body is the one which has this the nervous system and the brain to manifest God. That is why humans, Master said, the human body, we are made in the image of God. And also God has given us the free will. So what we choose from that moment, from that soul, when it enters the human body, then all its action, they are now linked to karma, right? Whatever, as from the state of rest is what it said. Now, any movement from the state of rest is a karma. When we express ourselves in a in a good ways of being generous, of being kind, that ensues good karma. And when we act badly, then we ensue bad karma, and we will have to then it's a cause and effect. So what we put out, the energy we put out, has to come back to us through the same person, in the same incarnation, or through some other agent in some other incarnation. But it has to come back. It has to come back to that state of rest. That is what Swamiji writes. And he also says that the karma is like, it's like our ego is the pole through to which, so when we incarnate with our or when we die, we just drop the physical body, but we carry our astral body and the causal body along with us, incarnation to incarnation. And all our likes, dislikes, desires, regrets, karma are spread in that astral body, with the ego being the pole to which they are all attached. And when the time is right for that particular karma to sprout, it does. And he says that for the self-realized masters, that is not so, because there's no ego anymore. So there's nothing to hold on to for the karma. So, and when they live, he says they all actions flow through them. It is not I am doing it, it happened to me, they did this to me, versus They just allow those things to flow through them. So there is nothing that sticks to them, right? So even they perform when they perform good deeds, since it's not from, there is no ego to stake on, it flows to their disciples. The good karma, the result of the good karma of a self-realized master flows through the devotees, through the disciples. So this is where we had ended in the last class. Before we read, because the reading we had done for some more of that, so I will just go through where we left off. Swamiji writes, spiritually speaking, as I just mentioned, that karma can be good or bad. Karma has different levels of manifestation depending on how clearly it expresses the divine consciousness. So, the love, generosity, kindness are like God affirming, right? We are affirming the divine consciousness, and hatred, jealousy are like projecting, right? So that is how it works. And he also mentions that karma may be described as a system of rewards and punishments which helps the ego ultimately to spurn all personal attachments and thereby to manifest its innate divinity. Why does, I mean, is it God punishing us or God rewarding us? None. See, so God doesn't want us to suffer, right? It is we ourselves, through our ego, feel, oh, I did this, so that was wrong. And the master said that at the time of death, the entire life plays in front of that person, and then the regrets and desires and all that come in when they see their life events going through them. And so the ego in the next incarnation, or in one of those incarnations, brings that uh, and that particular thing, and it wants to experience what it had made some other person suffer. That is the punishment that the ego, the person, the soul itself gives, because it's a lesson that it needs to learn, right? So it says suffering is the karmic result of action performed that is not in tune with a person's intrinsic divine nature. What is the intrinsic divine nature? We are all, as I said, we are made in the image of God. God's qualities are our qualities. But when we act which is not in tune with that, we suffer. And when we act in tune, we are rewarded, right? So it says to learn, we learn when we have done, we learn the lessons of why we shouldn't do it, why it happened to us, because we did something like that, or even we had done something good, so we should do more of that. So he says that to learn all one's lessons thoroughly requires more opportunities for error and self-correction than one gets in a single lifetime. So we cannot learn it all in one lifetime. So we get some prarabdha karmas, what we bring from previous incarnations, we just carry forward a little bit. So I want to go through these experiences and learn lessons in this lifetime. So little bit we bring. How many lifetimes we have to go through before we finally understand the lessons that we need to learn? It's scary, millions actually, right? So he says often indeed more than one incarnation is needed to learn even one important lesson, and there are millions of lessons that each one of us have to learn. We don't know what we are carrying from what incarnation, and that is a scary prospect. But God gives us another chance, right? He gives us one more chance. Try it, and that is how we keep incarnating, trying to understand. Uh, trying to take those chances, but in the process we end up adding more karma also, good and bad. So there the whole point is that how do we escape this? And Swamiji writes, reincarnation explains the enormous inequities of health, intelligence, talent and opportunities one finds in human life. So somebody, I mean, like children, if one child is born handicapped or without vision, why would, I mean it's easy to say that, oh, it's such an innocent baby, why did God do this? God didn't do it. This is where that reincarnation, karma and reincarnation come into play. This is where that explains why somebody is born with all opportunities and some are born in with various deformities even or diseases. Why? Is because we have brought it, and we are bringing those prarabdha karma to learn the lessons that we need to learn. That is only way to explain this. Otherwise, how do you explain why two children are born so different? So with that, and Swamiji also goes on to say that many people have had children, especially remember their past lives, and that is what the next page is all about. And then slowly by the time they attain more than 5 years old, it slowly starts diminishing, and also people around them start dissuading them from remembering those lifetimes, and so then it goes away. That is what he talks about. But the point is, why he is mentioning these things that children do remember, is to make one the point across that this definitely exists. We are not just living this one lifetime. We have been here many times around. So with that, let us hear Swamiji read the chapter from page 316. We will be reading and we will discuss.
Is there any end to evolution? A visitor once asked Paramahansa Yogananda. No end, the master replied. Progress goes on until you achieve endlessness. At Mount Washington, reincarnation was normal to our way of thinking. We took it quite in stride if ever Master told us, as he sometimes did, about our own or someone else's past lives. Looking one day at Jan Savage, aged 9, he exclaimed laughingly, "Oh, little Jan is no child. He is still an old man." I once told him I had always wanted to live in solitude. His reply was, "That is because you have done it before. Most of those who are with me have lived alone many times in the past." He made such remarks so casually that it rarely occurred to me to press him for more information. A few others expressed deeper interest, however, and sometimes Master responded to them quite explicitly. A few years after Dr. Lewis lost his mother, Master, knowing Doctor's devotion to her, informed him she has been reborn. If you go to, he mentioned some address north of Boston in New England, you will find her there. Dr. Lewis made the journey. It was uncanny, he told me later. The child was only 3 years old, but in many of her mannerisms she seemed exactly like my mother. I observed, too, that she took an instantaneous liking to me. It was almost as though she recognized me. Mrs. Vera Brown visited a theater one evening with Master and a few of the disciples. A little girl in the row ahead of them captured her interest. I couldn't take my eyes off her, she later told me. There was something about the child that just fascinated me. I think it was because she looked so old and wise for her age, and at the same time so sad. Afterwards, Master said to me, "You were fascinated by that little girl, weren't you?" "Yes, sir," I answered. "I don't know why, but I found myself watching her the whole time we were there." In her last life, Master said, she died in a German concentration camp. That is why she looks so sad. But her tragic experiences there, and the compassion she developed as a consequence, have made her a saint. That was the wisdom you saw in her that attracted you so. One day, Master was given a newborn baby to hold. I almost dropped it, he told friends later. I saw suddenly in that little, innocent-seeming form the brought-over consciousness of a murderer. Discussions on reincarnation sometimes became intensely interesting. One day I asked Master, "Did Judas have any spiritual realization?" "He had some bad karma, of course," Master replied, "but all the same, he was a prophet." He was? This variant on the common theme of that disciple's villainy astonished me. "Oh, yes," Master asserted emphatically. "He had to be one of the 12. but he had to go through 2,000 years of suffering for his treachery. He was liberated finally in this century in India. Jesus appeared to a certain master there, whom he asked to free him. "I knew Judas in this life," Master added. "You did?" Eagerly I pursued the matter. "What was he like?" "Always very quiet and by himself. He still had a little attachment to money. One day another disciple began to poke fun at him for this tendency, but the master shook his head. "Don't," he said quietly. "Leave him alone." In 1935, Master visited Stonehenge in England. To his secretary, Richard Wright, Diamota's brother, he remarked quietly, "I lived here myself 3,500 years ago." Sometimes he intrigued us with references, always casual, to the past lives of certain well-known public figures. Winston Churchill, he told us, was Napoleon. Napoleon wanted to conquer England. Churchill, as England's Prime Minister, has fulfilled that ambition. Napoleon wanted to destroy England. As Churchill, he has had to preside over the disintegration of the British Empire. Napoleon was sent into exile, then returned again to power. Churchill, similarly, was sent out of politics, then, after some time, came back to power again. It is an interesting fact that Churchill, as a young man, found particularly interesting the military exploits of Napoleon. Hitler, Master continued, was Alexander the Great. An interesting point of comparison here is that in warfare, both Hitler and Alexander employed the strategy of lightning attack, blitzkrieg, as Hitler called it. In the Orient, of course, where Alexander's conquests were responsible for the destruction of great civilizations, that appellation, the Great, is quoted with sarcasm. Master had hoped to reawaken in Hitler the well-known interest of Alexander in the teachings of India and of yoga, thereby to steer the dictator's ambitions toward higher ideals. He actually attempted to see Hitler in 1935, but his request for an interview was denied. Mussolini, Master said, was Mark Antony. Kaiser Wilhelm was Julius Caesar. Stalin was Genghis Khan. Who was Franklin Roosevelt? I inquired. I've never told anybody, Master replied with a wry smile. I was afraid I'd get into trouble. Abraham Lincoln, he informed us, had been a yogi in the Himalayas who died with the desire to help bring about racial equality. His birth as Lincoln was for the purpose of fulfilling that desire. He has come back again in this century, Master said, as Charles Lindbergh. It is interesting to note that the public acclaim that was denied Lincoln, though so richly deserved, came almost effortlessly to Lindbergh. Interestingly, too, after Lindbergh's death, a Hawaiian friend of his, Joseph Kahaleuahi, exclaimed, "This is not a small man. This man is like a president." Footnote, Reader's Digest, December 1974. Charles Lindbergh was noted for his interest in Indian philosophy. Perhaps, one wonders, having fulfilled his desire as a yogi to work for racial equality, and having as Lindbergh rejected the acclaim that was his karmic reward for Lincoln's success, he will once again become a yogi in his next life. Of more saintly people, Master said that Teresa Neumann, the Catholic stigmatist of Konnersreuth, Germany, was Mary Magdalene. That, he explained to us, is why she was granted those visions of Christ's crucifixion. Lahiri Mahashai, he once told me at 29 Palms, was the greatest saint of his time. In a previous life, he was King Janaka. Footnote, Janaka, though a king, was also one of the great masters of ancient India, a Raja Rishi, or royal sage. Durga Mata, in her book about Master, says that Rajarshi's title means king of sages. This is not wholly accurate. Babaji initiated him, that is to say, Lahiri Mahashai, in that golden palace, in reflection of the fact that he had lived in a palace before. According to another disciple, Master told someone that Lahiri Mahashai had also been the great medieval mystic Kabir. Babaji, Master told us, is an incarnation of India's greatest prophet, Krishna. Master then revealed to us that he himself had been Krishna's closest friend and disciple, Arjuna, Prince of Devotees, the Bhagavad Gita calls him. We found it easy to believe that he had been that mighty warrior, for Master's incredible willpower, his innate gift for leadership, and his enormous physical strength when he chose to exert it, all pointed to someone with the tendencies of a mighty conquering hero. Speaking of that incarnation, Master told me, that is why in this life I am so close to Babaji. Master knew the value of offsetting abstract teachings with these interesting sidelights. The barriers to memory that exist in the average person's consciousness between this lifetime and his previous ones melt away before the insight of wisdom. But of course Master's real interest and ours lay in our attainment of divine enlightenment. We found that familiarity with the law of reincarnation helped us to deepen our determination to escape the monotonous round of death and rebirth. But this was by no means in any of our minds the central focus of our devotion to Master's teachings. Belief in reincarnation also provided us with occasional insights into present spiritual difficulties. Henry Schaufelberger and Ed Harding, another older disciple, were distressed for a time to discover a deep-seated, mutual, but apparently irrational animosity between them. That is because you were enemies in a former life, Master explained to Henry, who asked him one day for guidance in the matter. This knowledge helped both men to understand the problem and to overcome it. The doctrine of reincarnation is closely related, as I have said, to the law of karma. Sometimes people object, but what can I learn from suffering if I don't remember what I did in the past that brought it upon me? The answer is that both the act and its karmic consequences reflect a mental tendency that is still carried with him. It is primarily with this tendency that the law deals. For example, if, out of mercenary greed, I once cheated someone out of his inheritance and suffer the consequences of that act in this life by losing an inheritance myself, both that first act and my subsequently being cheated will reflect my underlying tendency toward greed. I may have forgotten what I did before, but if I decide now that cheating is something that shouldn't happen to anybody, and if I resolve never on my part to cheat others, I will have untied at least one knot in my tendency to be avaricious. There may remain other kinks in that tendency to be straightened out, a whole series of them, in fact, developed from that single tendency, and each one in its own way reinforcing it. If I am wise, therefore, the loss of that inheritance will not only make me reflect on the fact that cheating is wrong, it will inspire me also to trace this question of dishonesty back to its root cause, avarice. I'll conclude that monetary greed is itself a fault, and I will try to discover and uproot the seeds of this fault in myself. If I am successful in this effort, a nullifying force field of non-attachment will be set up that will minimize the karmic consequences of any others of my greedy acts in the past. The power of karma depends in great measure on the intensity of the thought associated with it. Suppose I have overcome greed and acquired non-attachment before I lose that inheritance. In this case, the money I lose may come back to me unexpectedly from another source. In any case, I will suffer much less. Patanjali, the ancient exponent of yoga, states in his Yoga Sutras that when avarice is finally overcome, one attracts everything in life that he needs. As Patanjali quaintly put it, one will attract jewels in abundance. Yoga Sutras 237. It should be understood that the karmic law is quite impersonal. We can learn from our karma if we've a will to. It is quite possible, however, not to will to. An unwise reaction, for example, to a stolen inheritance would be to try to get even with the world in turn by cheating others. One who takes this course will only reinforce the tendency which attracted his misfortune in the first place. Thus he will sow seeds of even greater suffering in the future. Dr. Lewis once asked Master why a certain acquaintance had been born with a club foot. That Master replied is because in his last life he kicked his mother. Having a club foot in this life probably didn't stir that man to any noble resolution not to kick his mother in this life, but it must have acted on that tendency indirectly. His mother, after all, was the source of his physical existence. She represented in a very special way to him, therefore, the sacredness of life. When he kicked her, he, in effect, expressed contempt for life itself. His club foot in this incarnation may well have made him, at least in his own eyes, an object of contempt. An unwise reaction to such a self-image would be to hate life more than ever, a tendency that might be continued for many lives, until in sheer desperation he decided to reform. But if he reacted wisely to this self-image, he might tell himself what a blessing it would be to have a perfect body. Automatically from this reaction would come respect for life, which in turn would make it very likely that he would never treat any future mother with such contempt. One benefit of the doctrine of reincarnation is that it helps to keep one humble, concerned rather with attuning himself to God's all-ruling will than with imposing on the world his own petty desires. A belief in reincarnation helps one to accept more easily that least popular but most important of ancient injunctions, change thyself. I once had an interesting dream. Indeed, it seemed to me more than a dream. I saw myself in another life, deeply devoted to a particular friend. He took advantage of my
We're just waiting.
is that if I died with this attitude, my bitterness would, like a magnet, draw both of us back to similar but reversed circumstances. I would have the opportunity to treat him as unkindly as he had treated me. And if I treated him thus, ensuing bitterness on his part might very possibly reverse our positions once again. Perhaps only a succession of such return engagements, gradually diminishing in intensity, would enable us at last to work out our love-hate relationship, even as echoes die out gradually in a valley, or as the ripples caused in a pond by a falling stone subside gradually as they pass back and forth over the pond several times. Why take so long, I asked myself. Isn't it possible to escape these waves of retribution right now? Whatever the lessons my friend needs to learn, surely I, at least, can free myself. Then, from the depths of my heart, I cried, I forgive him. At that moment, with a feeling of ineffable relief, I awoke. In that simple act of forgiveness, I felt that I had actually freed myself of some karmic burden. All human life, so the Indian scriptures tell us, is a dream. Its ultimate goal is for us to learn our lessons well, to overcome our attachments to material limitations, and to realize that all things, seemingly so separate and real in themselves, are only manifestations of the one light of God. The highest lesson of all is to learn to love God. The best karma of all is to love Him. Sir, Norman said rather morosely one day to Master, I don't think I have very good karma. Remember this, Master replied with deep earnestness. It takes very, very, very good karma even to want to know God. Through love of God, and only through that love, can one win final release from physical rebirth and earn the right to advance to higher spheres of existence. Victory comes not by hating this world, but by beholding God's presence in it everywhere, and by paying reverence to the veriest fool as though to a holy shrine. You must be very joyous and happy, Master said, because this is God's dream, and the little man and the big man are all nothing but the dreamer's consciousness.
Amazing. It's a very deep subject. I don't know how much we can cover it in, 15, 20 minutes, but let's try to understand this. Where we start, where somebody asks, is there any end to evolution? And Master said, no end. Progress goes on until you achieve endlessness, which is you merge back into the infinite. You are, completely free, beyond Nirvikalpa Samadhi, right? Is when we are completely free of all karmic, even in our causal body, right? Because those who attain Nirvikalpa Samadhi, they are freed from the karma of not being born back on this earth and have to go through those lessons, but they still have the seed, the thought seed of the causal body. So there is a lot of, in Autobiography of a Yogi, when Sri Yukteswar resurrects himself and comes back and meets Master, he explains how this works when he says, I am in the Hiranya Loka, helping those souls who have, attained Nirvikalpa Samadhi, but still have those seeds in their astral and causal body, and I'm helping them overcome that. So they are higher souls, but still there is, it's a lot of work, let's put it that way. So till you achieve endless bliss, where you're completely one with the divine, is when that's where it ends, the evolution ends. So here then he goes on to, it's little tidbits about who was born, when, where, before this. It's just to keep that interest going, because yes, it's, Kriya Yoga, there's meditation, there's a lot of things that we need to do, but this just to keep it interesting. Master would talk about all these things. And interestingly, he talks about this girl where one lady says, I was very attracted to this little one. He says in her past life, she died as in a German concentration camp. That is what so sad. Somebody's, this thing is on. That is why she looks so sad. But her tragic experiences there and the compassion she developed as a consequence have made her a saint. Now, here is an important lesson that Master is telling us. All of us go through various experiences, some good, some not so good. How we take it decides where we are going. So this girl had it must have been a very bad experience, right? German concentration camp, tragic experience. But how did the attitude with which she took? She developed compassion for, suffering, others suffering. She realized, how difficult it can be. And instead of becoming bitter, that's what. So instead of she was saying, how could they do to me? I'm so sad. I went through so much of difficulties. That is a mental tendency. Then, you are blaming the world, the consequences, the experiences, everything, circumstances. Instead, she developed compassion that anybody she sees who is suffering, she feels for them. And he says that made her a saint. So, and he goes on to talk about Judas. Judas, if we all remember, he was one of the primary disciples of Jesus, and very advanced. But he was the one who, for I think 30 silver or something, he showed where Jesus was, and then they took him away, and he was crucified. So that was the bad karma he had. I mean, later on, he did regret and all. So that is why now here Swamiji is asking, did Judas have any spiritual realization? He says he had some bad karma, of course, but all the same, he was a prophet, right? He was one of those apostles of Jesus. But he did that, and for that he says that he had to be one of the 12, and he had to go through 2,000 years of suffering for his treachery to Jesus, one such an important thing. And he did that. 2,000 years he suffered. He says he was liberated finally in this century, when he's talking about uh, early 20th century. Jesus appeared to a certain master. He was Ramakrishna Paramhansa, the master, whom he asked to free him. They are all linked, all these masters are one. They know everybody's karma, and their whole purpose is to liberate us, right? So he says, Master says, I knew Judas in this life. Means Master has met him in that body where he was. Um, and he goes on to say that he was quiet, but later on he was I mean, it took time. 2,000 years is a long time, but he was liberated, right, at the end of the day. That's what all to say. There is no endless punishment for any sin that one performs. I mean, it can't be like, for everything is limiting. No, even that sin of being treacherous to Jesus, even that is a limited. I mean, God is, I mean, he is forgiving, he's compassionate. So it can't be that, it's an endless hell that one has to live. You go through various, the karma, you have to suffer, but then at some point you are going to be liberated. Everybody gets liberated. But then 2,000 years, then he's talking about when he was in England. He says, I lived here myself 3,500 years ago. He's talking about Master was the William the Conqueror. In that, he's talking about that incarnation. Interestingly, his priest was, I think, some name Frank or something, was Sri Yukteswar in this incarnation. And then he goes on to talk about other, famous personalities in history. Where he's talking, he's also saying that, he Master did try in 1935 to meet Hitler. He knew what Hitler was capable of, and where the world was heading. So there he did give a try to, convert him by introducing him to the higher ideals of the Hindu philosophy and all, but he couldn't meet. Hitler didn't give him an appointment. And he's talking about Lincoln, and he's talking about Teresa Newman, who we saw in the autobiography of a yogi, of that she never ate. Master, on his way back to India in 1935, went specifically to meet her, and he also saw. I mean, he stayed back to see that every once a week, every day, every week, she would go through what Jesus went through on the crucifixion. So, she would start oozing blood from those points where Jesus was nailed. So she'll be lying on bed and blood would be oozing out. She would see the scenery of the whole thing of Jesus being crucified. Stigmata, right? So, and who was she? He says that she was Mary Magdalene. Magdalene was again a very close disciple of Jesus Christ, and she is also there on the Last Supper on the table. She is also there. She was that close, and they say that she was the first one to see Jesus when he was resurrected. She was a very high soul, and hence in that incarnated form also she was connected to that crucifixion of Jesus. So he's saying that is why she was granted those visions of Christ's crucifixion. This is so interesting when we see that everything is interconnected. The life that we are living, we have put a lot of energy behind that to be who we are. This moment, what we are, where we are, we have put a lot of energy from many incarnations to be here where we are, right? And he says, Lahiri Mahashaya, he says, was King Janaka. King Janaka is the father of Sita Ma. And Babaji initiated him in that golden palace in reflection of the fact that he had lived in a palace before. And also because, that particular, he was a king. So there was this small, very small desire that was inside him. So Babaji, remember, that was the only thing that was kind of holding back Lahiri Mahashaya to be that master. So he finished that also by initiating Priya by manifesting that golden palace for him. Just imagine, even that little bit, the master takes care that either we overcome it, or we have to go through it. Either we go through it or we overcome it, right? We transmute it. So, and he was also Kabir, the mystic Kabir. Master also said that it was when Jesus was born in the manger, and then they say that the three wise men came from the east, right? And it also said that they followed the star of the east. Master said it was Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, and Sri Yukteswar, and the men from the east, the wise men from the east. And it's very strange, if somebody were to follow the star of the east, you wouldn't go towards the west, right? You would be going more towards the east. So what did that mean? That though that statement is, Master said, this is the star of the east. In the inner anatomy, this is the star, this is the sun, this is the star of the east. And the three wise men followed this, and they knew exactly where Son of God was born. So they reached the place, right? Again, very interesting tidbits, all these things, how this works. He says, the barriers of memory, Master said, the barriers of memory that exist in the average person's consciousness between this lifetime and of his previous ones melt away before the insight of wisdom. When wisdom comes, you know all your past lives. In fact, when here in this chapter also, Swamiji talks about Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, in which in one of, he's given yam and niyam, they are the foundation of a spiritual quest that we have to go through, and we have to follow that. Yam are the don't do's. When we don't do that, we are freer, right? We are more in touch with our intrinsic divine nature. So this one is aparigraha, where you are not attached to that which is yours, right? So even that which is yours, you're detached from that. You have it, good, you are using it, but then you're not very attached. Even if it is not there, it's okay. And to the extent, when we practice it to the extent of Patanjali, in all yama and niyama, he also gives the perfection. When you follow it to the perfection, then what is the result? What does the yogi attain? And in that, he says that when the yogi, in his quest for aparigraha, non-attachment to that which is his own, when he does it to the perfection, he is able to see all his past lives, because he's not even attached to this body. Why it is not visible to us what we lived as is because we are so caught up in this body, in this ego. So we are not revealed those things. But when the yogi is beyond even this body, even this ego, he is able to see all that he has lived. So it is revealed to him. So but he said that Master's real interest and ours lay in our attainment of divine enlightenment. So, though Master would tell all these little tidbits, but that was not primary to this, because some people would say, oh, I want to know what I was in my past life and all that. It's so interesting. Seriously, Master said, this life, what you are right now, just you need to, this moment is all that matters. His very primary disciple, woman disciple, Gyan Mata, Sister Gyan Mata, somebody said that they saw a vision or something that she was Teresa Newman, or was it, I think Teresa, Saint Teresa of Avila is what they had seen her as. And when Sister Gyanmata was told this, she wrote to Master saying that it doesn't matter what I was in any incarnation. All that it matters, Master, to me is what I have become in your hands. That is all that matters. This moment, we are disciple of a self-realized Master. What can we do this moment onwards is all that should matter to us, and which is to find God, period. I mean, how does it not matter really? The fact that we are still around and not found God is, not very pleasing. So the whole point is this moment is all that matters, and what do we do about it now? So then we go on. We have time, yeah. So here he says the doctrine of reincarnation is closely related to the law of karma. So we reincarnate because we have certain karma and we have to work out those karma, good and bad, everything. He says some people object, but what can I learn from suffering if I don't even remember what I did in the past that brought it upon me? The answer is that both the act and its karmic consequence reflect a mental tendency. If I'm still carrying that tendency, I have to. I mean, karma is not coming there to punish us. It's just come to teach us a lesson that we have to break that tendency and move on. That's the main point. Learn the lesson. It stops us. Sometimes we find that same karma, things keep happening to us again and again. Why? Is because we haven't yet learned the lesson, right? So he says, for example, if out of mercenary greed, I once cheated somebody. So I have to go through that. I have cheated somebody, so I have to go through that, and somebody will cheat me. Now, how do I deal with this is the important thing here. Have I learned the lesson and said, oh my God, this is so bad. If you get cheated, it's not a good feeling. So nobody should get cheated. I mean, we take that I am definitely not going to cheat anyone. And anybody getting cheated, even if, so-called enemy, if I feel good, I'm good for him, versus, oh, that was a bad thing to happen. So the moment we cut off that, this should not happen to anyone, we are free. It's not going to help. And he says that because, again, it is a mental tendency. Or if I am cheated, I'm like, oh my, I get all bitter and I make sure that I get back at them or get back at the world. How can I be cheated? We are in that loop. We are still caught up in that loop, right? And he says that, but if I decide now, if I resolve never on my part to cheat others, I will have untied at least one knot. That's all he's saying. One knot in my tendency to be avaricious. One knot. He says there may remain other kings. So what happens is I cheated somebody. So that is one tendency. Because I cheated somebody, I'm fearful now. I'm suspicious because I know this can happen to anyone, right? Because I have done, so I know that somebody will do it for me, or this happens in this world. So I will be suspicious of everyone at all times. I will never trust anyone. I'm always looking behind my back. I'm very possessive of, these are the various other tendencies that develop from just that one act of cheating someone. So that's why he's saying that the moment I say that I'm on my part, I don't want to get away, I have just opened one thing, right? There may remain other kings and that tendency to be straightened out, a whole series of them, in fact, developed from that single tendency, and each one has its own way of reinforcing it, right? So if I'm wise, therefore, the loss of that inheritance will not only make me reflect on the fact that cheating is wrong, it will inspire me also to trace this question of dishonesty back to its root cause, avarice. Again, in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, that yama is non-greed, which is asteya, right? So when we are not, so again, this also manifests in a lot of ways. It's not just cheating somebody of their material possession, but cheating them of their not giving them credit. There are various, even psychologically also. Somebody has done something, we take credit for them. That's cheating, right? Cheating them of the credit that they should have got. So it works on various levels. So the root cause is greed, right? And he says, I'll conclude that monetary greed is itself a fault and will try to discover and uproot the sin. So we have to go to the root cause. So something happens to us, rather than getting all, oh my God, and all that, happening to me, and how can this, why me, why this is happening? Master said, oh, good. Now, this mental tendency also I discover. The moment we change, because Master says that God created everyone for his entertainment and for our entertainment also, and for our knowledge, our learning. If we are not learning, and we are always suffering, mentally suffering for everything that happens to us, we are not really entertaining God also. So the more we live in that, okay, I found one more thing, how can I overcome this mental tendency? If we look at it that way, another lesson, we will be able to free ourselves faster, progress faster on the spiritual journey. So the power of karma depends in great measure on the intensity of the thought associated with it. How are we taking it, and how intensely? If something bad happens and we are intensely suffering, it's the power of the karma. Suppose I have overcome greed and acquired non-attachment before I lose that inheritance. In this case, the money I lose will come back to me unexpectedly from some other quarter. In any case, I will suffer much less. In this, that again, Asteya, as I was mentioning, that Patanjali also gives what does the yogi get when he follows that particular yama or niyama to the perfection. And for Asteya, he said this only, that whatever the yogi needs will come to him. The universe gives him. He doesn't have to go running after anything. It will just come. Somebody will help him. Something will come. That is how it works. And he says one will attract jewels of abundance, is what he has written. It should be understood the karmic law is quite impersonal. It is not, oh, why is it affecting me? It is a law. It is like law of gravity. It doesn't matter who, if you might be the mightiest of king, or, some person who is on the road. It is the same for everyone, right? The law of gravity. Similarly, karmic law is a universal law. It's quite impersonal. We can learn from our karma if we have a will to, but most of the time he says there's no will to learn. An unwise reaction, for example, to a stolen inheritance would be to try to get even with the world in turn by cheating others, right? One who takes this course will only reinforce the tendency which attracted his misfortune in the first place. So again, if somebody has done, something wrong, many times, why don't we do certain things? We know that, you should not go and rob a bank. We don't have the tendency even. Why is it that? Because we have done it in the past and learned our lessons. That's why it doesn't even attract us anymore. So let us not fool ourselves into saying, oh, I'm such a nice person, whereas, oh God, those guys go and loot a bank. It's because I know I have suffered for it, and I finally said this doesn't work. Multiple incarnations we have gone through, we have done it all. So if we are not even attracted to do certain wrongs, is because we have learned the lesson hard, right? So rather than condemning some person, it's good to pray for them, that they are in absolute ignorance. They will be suffering, they will be facing the consequences. So we pray for that soul, that they come to light, right? They come to be wise enough to understand how this works. Okay, then he goes on to talk about the person who had a club foot. How intrinsic is this knowledge, right? Master can see, right? Master can see all of our past lives. He knows each, there is no hiding. We don't remember our past lives. He knows. He knows what all we have done, what all karma is waiting for us, and he's there to help us. He's there to guide us if we allow him to. Because God and Guru have given us a free will to reject or accept. what is our choice? That is the only free will we have. We need to act wisely on that. So he says one benefit of the doctrine of reincarnation is that it helps to keep one humble, concerned rather with attuning himself to God's all-ruling will and with imposing on the world his own petty desires. So why we need to know about reincarnation and karma is to understand this. It works. I mean, it works like mathematics. It is an universal law. The more we understand it, the more we'll be free. Why something happening to me? We understand I have put out that energy in this lifetime or in some other lifetime, or I'm carrying some mental tendency from something that I have done. How do I learn the lesson? And and here is where Swamiji talks about that dream of his, where he says that the friend he loved who betrayed him. What will happen if I'm bitter? I'll give back to him. I have to give back. I'll come back another lifetime. I'll give back to him. Then he will be bitter. He'll come back. We are in a loop, and life will keep putting. I mean, the universe will keep putting us back, because the ultimate aim for all is to reach Satchidanand, right? Ever existing, ever conscious, ever new joy, ever new bliss. We have to reach that stage of bliss. And we can only do that when we learn to love all, when we are in an expanded state of consciousness, where we find everything is me, right? We have to reach there. So the moment we are able to untie that knot, okay, he has betrayed, I forgive. And just saying, just committing, at this moment, we might not be even wanting to help equation. He will have to go through the karma that he had put out by betraying a very close friend. Somebody else will give, but we are out of that equation. We are done with it. That is our aim, right? So he says perhaps because otherwise we have to keep coming back. He says still, that is why master said that, some families, when you see everybody's fighting because they were enemies in their previous life. Universe, the more, because we have always, putting out so much energy against them, the universe will bring those people together to fight it out in close quarters or start loving. That one gets in. So don't hate anyone so much. Don't put out too much energy in, going through, oh, what he did or she did to me, because we will keep getting caught in that loop again and again. So he says, perhaps only a succession of such return engagements, gradually diminishing in intensity, would enable us at last to work out our love-hate relationship. So it can take incarnations to overcome that. Do we really want that? So best is to, forgive. Why carry all that so much? There's this beautiful story of this teacher. I mean, I read it somewhere on the internet. She gives a packet of tomatoes to all the little kindergarten kids, and she says that, all the time carry it around for next 1 week. It has to be with you all the time. So first day, second day, after third, fourth day, the children start saying that I don't want it anymore, because they have started rotting. So they stink, and they say, I don't want it anymore. And they throw it. By third or fourth day, they throw it away. Says, no, ma'am, I can't have. So that is what happens when somebody did something to us, and we are hurt, we are angry, and there are various other thoughts and feelings that develop around that one incident, and we carry it around. We can carry it around this lifetime, next lifetime. It's that rotten tomatoes. We don't really want that, none of us would want. We wouldn't carry a rotten tomato. So why would we carry those rotten emotions in us, which don't serve any purpose anymore? So best is to, learn the lesson. It came to me because of some tendency in me or something I have put out in some incarnation. What is the lesson? Sometimes we don't understand what can be the lesson. Pray, meditate on it, ask Master to help you understand, and move on. That's the main point. Move on, not carrying. And especially if somebody has been very bad with us, we definitely don't want them in the next lifetime. So all the more reason, forgive. And the forgiveness has to be from the heart. It can't be I forgive, but then every time we think of them as like this, thing that is burning. The volcano is still there. We have to let go. And that is why Kriya Yoga is such a beautiful technique Master has given. He called it airplane route to God. Because of this, there are so many tendencies we are carrying within us, so many karma we are carrying within us. If we sit down to introspect and let go one at a time, I mean, how many, So Kriya Yoga, the more we do Kriya with that intensity, with complete concentration, Kriya brings that energy. And 108 Kriya, if somebody is doing, it just dislodges. It's like all those pebbles lying on the riverbed. When the rain comes, it just dislodges everything and takes it in its way. And that is what Kriya does. So we don't need to know what tendency I'm carrying. It just takes it off and throws it off. And that is how one is able to progress faster on the spiritual journey. And that is why it's very important to understand, introspect, do yam, niyam, follow all that, and do Kriya. Because that's the airplane route to God. That's the airplane route to liberation. So with that, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Auntie.